check 1, 2. See if you can hear me okay. Cool. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Hello. All right, perfect. I see a lot of the same faces here. It's awesome that you're back. Rob, Aaron, Randolph, LCG, Randolph. There he is. Bob, Jared, Larry, Steve Irby. How you doing, bud? Todd, Randolph, again. Aaron, Sam, Larry. I think I got everybody. Cool. Angelo here. Awesome. Rick is here. Awesome, Rick. Aaron is here. Donald, Jeff, Ron, Son, Ken, Ramon. Awesome. William, good. All right. Well, I'm so glad. Again, thank you so much for your time to want to hang out with me for a little while and talk about guitar and guitar playing and guitar gear and whatever else. Hey, Brett. Hey, Ed. Hey, Dan. Awesome. Randy, Peter, Michael. Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, to go ahead and get started, what we'll do is I've got a few questions on another sheet that people are asking about, and then you are all, hey Aaron, hey Angelo, you are more than welcome to ask questions on the chat as well. I'll just try and go back and forth as best I can and try and get to everybody's questions, but you can ask anything that you want, whether or not it's about guitar playing, a particular topic of guitar, whether it's about guitar gear, whether it's about performance, whether it's about band stuff, being in a band, traveling, touring, whatever. We can talk about anything that you want. Okay, awesome. Thank you, everybody. So the first question I've got here, Raphael says, can I do better bar chords? In all honesty, Raphael, you got to practice them more, right? But let me give you a couple of things that I think about with bar chords. Number one is make sure that the guitar is in appropriate position with the neck up a little bit so you're not fighting it. Secondly, make sure that it's set up properly. Make sure you got a good set of strings on there that aren't too thick. The strings aren't too far away from the neck. You know, the logical things, don't have a guitar that you're fighting to play guitar. That, for me, that's not a lot of fun. Just so I can say, hey, I've got really thick strings on my guitar isn't enough for me. I want to be able to play it comfortably. That's what I'm looking for. But the approach is the last thing, is when you go to play a bar chord, the most important thing is when you come up to the guitar to play, you know, don't try and play with your elbow out. Try and make sure that your elbow's in a nice, comfortable position and your hand is turned just a little bit. Because if you think about it, when you're making a bar chord, that pinky, you can't have your hand sitting this direction and try and make a chord. You want to turn in, okay, and find where it's comfortable. Try and hug the frets as close as you can to make the sounds that you want, okay? Again, bar chords for me were a really tough thing, and when I first started learning how to play them, I hated them. And now I don't even think twice about it, but it really is all about the comfort of my approach, the comfort of where the guitar is sitting relative to my body and my approach. Again, we're all different sizes. Some people are very tall. Some people like me are very short. Some people have really big hands. Some people have small hands. You got to figure out what works best. But the third thing is making sure that the guitar itself is set up properly so you're not fighting that guitar. Okay? Awesome. Let's see here. What do you recommend to break through the hand synchronization barrier? Well, it depends on what you mean by that. The big thing with learning to play fast, if that's what we're talking about of synchronization, is doing it a billion times at a slow pace. But just like I used to be, I was a sprinter in high school, and then I became a marathoner, long distance runner when I hit college and beyond. And the big thing with sprinting is that everything came down to a tenth, if not a hundredth of a second. So you have to time everything. So for me, the biggest thing is practicing something without a metronome. You know, getting comfortable with what I'm trying to. And then ultimately, once I've done all of those sorts of things, trying to synchronize at a particular speed, then I bring the metronome in and figure out, fine-tune where I need to be with that metronome, right? So I'm not faking. The big thing is not to fake. The most important thing is to do whatever it is you're doing as authentically as you possibly can. So when I bring that metronome in, it's got to be at a speed that I can actually play at. And again, not for 3 seconds or something like that, because that's, you know, I've always thought of, like, for me, I was never a weightlifter. It isn't how big I can get my muscles. It's my endurance. That's what my life has always been about, endurance, whether it's running, whether it's lifting, whether it's playing, it's about endurance. It can't just be about speed for a short burst of time and then I can't do anymore. It's, like lifting a lot of weight, 5 times or something like that. I've never had that mentality. Me, it's always been about endurance. So the metronome, the goal with the metronome is to find that speed where you can do something for a nominal amount of time and do it comfortably. Like you're not faking, you can really feel yourself synchronizing to it. And then you can keep trying to build that up. Hey, everybody. You can keep trying to build that speed up once you know what your speed is. But know your speed's like science. So every day you wake up, you go, okay, I'm going to do this exercise and this is what speed it's at. You've got it written on a piece of paper. That's how you start developing those things. And like for me, I just keep doing it. I do them constantly. I've done them my whole life. That's kind of how you do it. So let's see here. Rick says, how was Germany? Germany was good. It was incredibly busy, but it was good. And it's just always really amazing, the people that I meet and the connections that I make going to these things. And it's just so funny because the world is such a small place, so much smaller than I thought it was when I was younger. You meet so many really great people and people that, you never thought you'd meet, and here you are meeting them and hanging out with them. And it's a really wonderful thing. Very blessed for sure. But it was very, very busy. Hey, Hal, Hector, what's the easiest way to learn the diatonic scales? You gotta visualize them. You have to learn to visualize them. If you're playing, let's say you're playing G major and you're playing this, right? That's your position, that first position, if you will. You might know it differently than me, but understanding that I'm playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I run out of strings, learning to visualize that. As I play across the guitar, when I'm doing whatever, right? If I hear a jam track, like let's say I do this. I don't know if this jam track is ready, but we'll just try this. Right? I'm just trying to kind of screw around. But my point is, the more I understand about that fretboard, okay, the more I understand about it, the more I can move around, the more creative I can get, the more opportunity I have for doing things. And the way to do that is I think the one thing that people do wrong a lot is that they tend to try and feel like they're supposed to study in all 12 keys or something like that, in all the modes and all these different things. And they wind up with just these narrow little slices of information for each key that they play in. And what I think is almost more important, and this is just my opinion, figure out what keys you want to play in or what key you see as necessary for your station in life, the band you play in, the music you write, whatever, and really try and spend some quality time learning to see that thing across your fretboard. Studying your fretboard, staring at your fretboard, and then like for me, my fingers don't define what I see on the fretboard. What I see on the fretboard's done with my eyeballs, right? Then my fingers go there and start going to these various places that my eyes can see. So it's really important to understand, for me, one of the most important things that was life-changing for me was learning to see something across the fretboard. Now, again, I don't mean 100%. It might be 70%. It might be 50%. I don't know. It's different for everybody. But breaking out of seeing one position can be really freeing in your playing. And if you can't even see one position, you got to sit and study it. Now, there's a difference between seeing a shape on the fretboard that we call a position and understanding the theory behind the position. Those are two different things. You can practice a position on the guitar and not understand the theory behind it. Learning the theory is another element of practice, right? But that has nothing to do with what your fingers and your eyes are doing. Your fingers and your eyes are studying various shapes that connect together across the fretboard. Your fingers are practicing various elements, arpeggios, licks, patterns, sequences, God knows what, right? Whatever they might be. And then there's the theory that can go on top of that, which is why we spend our whole lives trying to learn how to do this. So hopefully that helps you a little bit, okay? Let's see here. I just discovered how to bend in tune. That is awesome. It is huge, okay? Let's see here. Good to see you too. How can I get into the soloing masterclass when I'm flat broke? Well, A, wait until you have money. B, use me on YouTube. Use as much stuff as I got on YouTube, okay? Or honestly, C, use the information that you have. Maybe you already have a couple of courses and maybe you don't really need another course. Maybe you're cool with what you got. You just got to dig in there a little bit further, okay? The answer isn't always buying a new course. Sometimes it is when you're ready for it. But if you're not ready for it, look for other things. Maybe just a couple of licks would suffice you. Maybe some information, just some inspiring information, okay? Yeah, I love that course too. The Soloing Masterclass is one of my favorites. Let's see here. Oh, Rich had back surgery. Is that what you're saying? Oh, me too. Had elbow surgery. Been without my guitar for 8 weeks. Ouch. Aaron, I just had back surgery. Yeah, see, this is what happens when you get old. You have surgeries. I know how it goes. Let's see here. David says, what about smoothing out the picking process? I call it sewing machine movement. For instance, running eighth notes at 170, 200, but cannot seem to break above that. You will, but you just need to keep at it. I mean, that's the thing is, what I think about is, when you get to a certain level with your picking, well, two things. Number one, you got to really think about every little nuance of what you're doing to try and break free of that. And then number two, and I'm just being completely honest, you have to start asking yourself, how fast is fast enough? And I'm not being cynical, I'm being completely honest. How fast is fast enough for what it is that I'm trying to do? Because it can become a drug, like speed and technique and things you can become very obsessed, and all of a sudden you forget about everything else that you should be working on because you're just concerned about this one element, whatever that element is. I know, I've been there. But if that's not the case, or even if it is, and you still want to really try and push that, you just got to sit and work at those. Sometimes with your metronome, it might just be 2 clicks of a metronome, and that's all. Not 2 clicks meaning 4, meaning you're at 170 and you get to 172, and you sit at 172 for 3 months, and you can't pass it. I've been there many times. You got to be patient. Some things just take I've always, I'm sure you've probably heard me talk about this, but sometimes you plateau in certain elements of your playing and you can sit there for weeks, if not months, if not frickin' years before things push up. And I'm not being negative. I'm saying this is the journey. This is what we deal with. So, let's see here. Seems that the speed is being lost with the depth of the pick to string contact. Well, that's possible. And David, obviously you've thought about trying some different picks too, to see if you can kind of bypass that. I buy lots of different picks on a regular basis. About, I don't know, maybe a year, maybe 2 years ago, I made the transition to a bigger pick. I used to use Jazz 3s and different hybrids of Jazz 3s for many, 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 many years. And again, in my way of thinking, I had small hands, therefore the Jazz 3 made perfect sense, and it does. I love the Jazz 3. But I sort of transitioned back to a bigger pick, still with a fine point, but a bigger pick. And now when I go back to Jazz 3s, they feel really awkward to me. And I'm not sure, to be honest with you, if they made me any faster, because my goals have kind of changed in the last few years than they were 20 years ago. But I like the way the bigger picks tend to feel, but they still have to have a really sharp point on them. I'm a pretty experienced player, but I have a problem executing a good pick slide every time. So can you show me a very detailed technique? Well, a pick slide either winds up being, either what I'm doing is I'm turning this way, right? So the pick is going up like this, right? I'm holding onto it and I'm turning my hand forward. And I can slide, or I can wiggle across the strings. Like, there's lots of different kinds of pick slides I can do. I can just dig in and get a full-on pick slide, right? The other thing is turning the pick this way, right? So I'm turning upward like this. So now the pick is sitting again up and down. The pick is up and down, okay? So either way is going to work. The goal is where you're going, you know, being able to kind of hit whatever you want at the end. Right? You know, wherever you want to go at the end of your pick slide, but for me, it's either over the top or it's this way. And honestly, I do them both ways. It just depends. I guess I haven't really thought about either one, but I do both of those for sure. Let's see here. Hector, that's fantastic. I'll take your advice to heart. That's awesome. Just got the soloing class, hoping to learn a lot from it. I hope you do too, Michael. Rich says, hey, I bought the 8 master course and 1 is the solo course. Wouldn't that be the same as the master class being offered now? I'm not sure. Yeah, I would think so. If it's a soloing master class, I think it's part of that, Rich. I don't deal with that side of things, but if you bought the 8 master courses, if you have them all, the soloing would be one of those for sure. Okay? Jeff says, had carpal tunnel surgery 3 weeks ago. Any exercises to strengthen the wrist? Well, I had carpal tunnel surgery many years ago, and I had to kind of start all over. The biggest thing for me with carpal tunnel surgery was doing appropriate stretching. And as far as exercises, just don't overdo it. I don't know how... I know the invasiveness of the carpal tunnel surgery nowadays is a lot less than it was when I had my surgery, but anytime you have any sort of surgery, back, or I see you guys talking about, you know, back or shoulder or whatever it might be, you got to be careful. Don't overdo those things. Sometimes a really nice thing to do when you've just had something like that is explore something else. You know, maybe, you know, if you just had a surgery, don't worry about how intense you're trying to practice. Although, you know, I mean, doing some standard things should be good. You know, I would talk to your doctor and say, hey, how much should I be practicing? How intense should I be? You know, what level of intensity? And if, you know, if your doctor says, hey, you know, take it easy for the first month or whatever, try and practice some other things. You know, try and practice some cool chord sounds. You know, different kinds of things that you could explore. You know, what I love to do is sometimes when I'm just sitting around playing, I like to just explore the tonality of the instrument. You know, I try just different things. And again, I'm not worried about a certain technique. I'm just trying to... just trying different things out and see what kinds of sounds and then if I find something I like, then I tend to kind of hit that. You know, I'll start developing it into a technical thing. Let's see here. Any advice on single strum note during solo like slash SRV? Single note during solo. Please help to develop strum single note. Well, if you mean something like this, the goal is, if that's what you're talking about, the goal is when you, which I do anyway when I solo, like I deaden out everything all the time when I'm playing, right? Unless it's a chord. I mean, if it's a chord and I want everything to ring out, it's going to ring out. But otherwise, like if I go to this note, you can see I'm deadening all the strings over here with this hand, and then I'm deadening the strings underneath this finger with this hand. So I don't get, you know, noise from things. But if you're talking about this kind of playing, the easiest way to do that is stay on thicker strings. Like the 6th and the 5th string are the best places to do that. Because that way what you can do is use this hand to deaden out everything underneath. So if I'm on the 6th string, I'm playing the 6th string and I'm killing everything else with that first finger. And then if I go to the 5th string, I could still kill everybody but I can take the tip of my index finger and kill the 6th string. But as I move down, if I go to the 4th string, I can deaden the 5th string, but the 6th string is now exposed, and I can't stop it here and still get that Stevie Ray kind of funk to it. Which is why, like, Stevie would do, you know, like chords like those, right? And then what he does is he moves down a little bit so he's not hitting those top strings. He'll funk it up, you know, different kinds of things. Right, but stay on those thinner strings. If I'm looking for single notes, though, I want to stay on these thicker sides of things. You know, I can always move up. And do that. So hopefully that helps you a little bit with that, buddy. Okay, let's see here. Working on theory, that's awesome. Peter says, eat lots of bananas and keep working on it. Yeah, that's the thing. That's for me, too. Bananas are kind of the wonder drug for a guitar player, and lots of water. You know, that's how you try and eat less. I mean, again, I hate to sound like I'm preaching because I love a cheeseburger as much as anybody else, but you try and stay away from fried food. You try and stay away from a lot of sodium. You know, you're trying to eat more bananas, try and, you know, fruits, things like that. Try and drink more water. You know, the less you puff up, that's the thing, is the more you retain water with a lot of sodium and things, that's when it gets tough. And when I'm on my off, you know, I'm not doing a lot of gigs and things like that, it doesn't bother me as much. But if I got to play live and I got to jump around and things like that, I tend to try and start eating healthier for that sort of thing. So let's see here. Sometimes I think I have the chords down, but when I attempt to play along with the song, I have a hard time getting in sync because of the other instruments and I get lost. Any advice? Well, keep trying is right, but what you got to do, and again, if you look up on YouTube, this thing that I call clearing, the most important thing is you've got to learn how to listen to a song and block out the parts that you don't really need. Like, don't just get attracted to the vocal line. Listen to it as much as you need with the vocal line, but at some point you want to get in there further and kind of bypass some of that stuff and listen to what's going on musically with the drums and the bass and the guitar, especially obviously the guitar, and kind of start getting a sense of what's going on in there. So when you play along, you're not getting distracted by various things because you've thought about it 50 times, 100 times. You've seen those chord changes in your head, right? You've seen yourself strumming. You've seen the changes. You've visualized all of these things. Like for me, learning how to play music, learning how to play songs, writing songs, whatever it might be, starts with what I see, not with what I play. Because if I just play it, I'm going to forget what I played. I've got to be able to visualize and then start trying to figure out how to play what it is that I'm visualizing. If it's something that's pre-written, well, that's pretty easy. I just have to keep thinking about it over and over and over. And that's what clearing is all about, is can I see this song as the song plays through? Can I see it clearly? Or do I get lost in my thought process as I'm listening to this song? Well, if I start putting my fingers on my guitar, that's not going to help. That's just going to make things even worse, right? So I have to listen and visualize and think through this song and what it is I'm supposed to be doing. And then I go to my guitar and start kicking up dirt, you know, figuring out what it is I need to do. And then I'll go back and listen. Can I see it now, right? And then I'll go back in there and dig in there and keep doing it. That's how I do it. That's what clearing is for me. Let's see here. My fingers going numb while playing is why I decided I needed the surgery. Yeah. I had the same thing. It was awful. Numbness is a little less, but hasn't gone away. That's not good. Mine went away completely after my surgery, but hopefully it goes away for you, buddy. Let's see here. Any tips on playing around the chords similar to Hendrix and Little Wing? Well, the big thing is learning how to visualize, again, something on your guitar. Like if I take this E chord, it's learning how to see things off of a particular chord. Like if I'm playing E major, you know, I can see this 5th string bar chord sitting here, and I can see these isms coming off of there. But what I'm really doing is the E major pentatonic, right? But when I see it as a scale, people tend to play it that way, right? When you see it this way, then you get all that stuff. When you see that same thing, but you see it as an extension of your chord, which is the same thing, it's just how you're looking at it. And I do this. And I can see, what I'm doing is visualizing a cage chord there too. So I'm seeing the E chord, but I'm seeing it as a G shape. So then I can do all that kind of stuff. Or, and again, all I'm doing there is going up to the second position of E major, but I'm again visualizing an E. So then, so that's a really great way of approaching playing stuff like that. Like that to me is what kind of chord chasing is you see a chord and you play off of it. C comes up. So you're not just limited to playing in a certain key, you're just following chords around. If it was a D chord, you're doing some D stuff. If it's a C chord, you're doing some C stuff. You know what I mean? There's many ways to approach soloing or comping or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't just have to be, I know the scale and that's all. Like country guys do that all the time, and guys like Hendrix did it all the time, where you just follow chords around. So if it's on a D, you play in D major. C comes up. G comes up. You know, you just follow the chords around and do whatever it is that you like to do. You know, there's just lots of cool stuff you can do like that. Okay, so let's see here. How about not thinking about what you are soloing instead of where you are in a scale or mode? Is this okay? Well, it depends. If you can make it sound musical, then it's okay. For me, most things have to start with some element of logic, right? I can't just look at my fretboard as an empty palette, and I'm sure you're not saying that, but I can't just look at the guitar with no lead, with no idea, right? No preface, because then nothing is more important than anything else. It's just a hodgepodge of nothing, right? But it is very easy to add chromatic elements into, like if you're trying to see your fretboard as E major and you want to add some blues stuff or some major stuff or some chromatic stuff or some minor stuff, or, you know, like if I took, well, I saw somebody, it was on the other sheet. Let me show you this. Somebody else had mentioned, I'll get back to what, well, let me actually look at it. Then I'll just kill two birds with one stone here. Can you explain what exactly a bridge and an interlude is, which I'll get to, and what part of the song you choose to solo over? Okay, so let me use this as an example, because that's a little bit different question. But let's say the person had mentioned Gypsy Road. Right, which is Cinderella, and I haven't played this in 20 years, but there it is. So the chorus goes, my gypsy road can't take me home, drive all night just to see you light. So it's B, E, and A, which if I put all those together, again, if you know anything about this, if I put all those things together, I have E, A, and B, which is a 1, 4, 5 in the key of E. So I'm in the key of E, but my main chord is B. So if you know anything about modes right now, friends, what mode am I really in when I'm playing Gypsy Road? This part of Gypsy Road. Right? And then I go to my Gypsy Road, can't take me home, drive all night just to see the light. Okay? What mode am I in at that point if I'm playing E, A, and B, but I'm emphasizing B? Let's see if anybody gets the answer here. Perfect. Mixolydian. Mixolydian is the answer. It's okay if you didn't get it right. It's okay. You'd be in Mixolydian because it's the 5 chord of the key of E. Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian. So you're in B Mixolydian. Now, let me make sure this is still pertaining to what you're asking. So if I was going to solo over this, there's the logical and then there's whatever, right? The logical says I'm in B Mixolydian. Okay? So what does B Mixolydian mean to me? Well, it may mean nothing, or it might mean I'm in E major, but I'm emphasizing the 5 chord, which sets up my fretboard to be E major, right? So I could go here and play in E major pentatonic, right? Or I could play in B Mixolydian, emphasizing my B. So I got that B sound in there, right? But the rock and roll side says, that sounds really happy. What I'd like to hear is some B minor in there, even though B minor makes no logical sense at all. So my point, I guess, is that depending on the circumstance, you might come up with a logical idea that works really well, right? You might decide that you want to add some more stuff in. Like you might take your E major and add in a bunch of other notes that make it more chromatic, and you go, wow, that sounds really cool. Or you go minor, which doesn't even make any sense, playing B minor over this B major chord progression, but it does in the context of rock and roll. We do it all the time. It's a blues thing, okay? So, yeah, I mean, so I don't know if that helps you. The most important thing is there's no right or wrong to rules. Sometimes the rules are much more important, right? I mean, if you're going to play over something like this, if I go, let's say I go, right? I'm playing Breakdown by Tom Petty. Okay, so you and I are in a band together, and I'm playing that groove, and the band is grooving to this thing. And it's your time to solo over the top, right? Okay? So if you're going to solo over the top and you go... First of all, it's completely out of context. Second of all, it makes no sense at all. And I'm not making fun of it. I'm making fun of me, right? But if you were listening to that song wants a melody. It wants a groove, right? It wants something to right? It wants something over the top of that. Now, could I throw some blues in there? Sure. Can I throw some chromatics? Yeah, heck yeah. My goal is I gotta sell it. No matter what it is I choose to do, I gotta sell it. Okay? So in this case, with this A minor to G, it wants a bit more of a melody than, say, maybe something that I'd be doing over, a Lamb of God tune. If I'm doing a Lamb of God tune and I've got a solo in there, I could get pretty out there because the song doesn't make any logical sense anyway. So the more remember, everybody, and I know I say this all the time, but your solo means nothing over nothing. Like, to just grab a guitar and start noodling in a guitar store is a lot of fun, don't get me wrong. But there's no context to anything. It's when somebody gives you something, which we call a bed, to play over. Once you've received this element that you're going to play over, now you've got a set of rules or responsibilities of some level. If you're playing over a Lamb of God tune, technique is going to be one of the essential elements. Exotic scales are probably going to be something of an essential element because of the style of music that it is. It doesn't want to go... It doesn't want that, right? It's not that style of music. If I was playing over Breakdown by Tom Petty, there's another set of rules for that. You see? So when I'm soloing over nothing, which I don't remember how Satriani said it, but it was just a great quote where he had said, when you're soloing over nothing, you're really, in terms of a harmonic connection, you're learning nothing. Now, you could learn a lot about your fretboard and you can learn a lot of licks. I do it all the time. I solo over nothing a lot, working on elements. But all the things that I'm working on, when the music starts playing, there's a lot of those things that I'm working on that are not going to translate to a particular situation that I find myself in. Some of it will work over this, and some of it will work over this, and some of it will work over this. Perfect, David. But they don't all translate over everything. It depends on the circumstance you find yourself in. Okay? Thank you very much. But yeah, that's the thing is that's half the fun for me of this guitar, is that wearing different hats, so to speak, of being able to play, like if I'm playing over breakdown, I'm not trying to pull out all of my best licks. Now, I haven't played over breakdown in 10 years, but I'm not going to, it isn't about all my best licks, although there are some things that I can use in there. It's about making a connection to that groove and having the audience really feel that groove, right? Where if I'm soloing over something that's a lot heavier, which I do find myself doing quite often because I play that kind of music a lot, then the rules change a little bit. You know, if I'm playing over something that's major or even poppy in nature, which I do sometimes. Again, if I get asked to play on an album or a solo for something and I get hired to do something, I'm just glad they actually wanted to hire me. I'm okay playing over whatever. It doesn't just, I don't, you know, music is music to me. I love it all. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. Okay? Awesome. Yeah, and I'll tell you guys, when we talk about jam tracks, and I know I've mentioned this a lot too, but please understand that what I'd like you to be able to do, just like how I said earlier, that instead of, you know, having 10% ability in G major and 10% ability in A major and 10% ability in B major, and you never really refine your fretboard to a higher level because you're always, you know, well, F sharp, I feel bad. I didn't give F sharp any time this week, and F sharp's going to feel sad. So instead of thinking of your fretboard like that and always feeling like you got to give time to every scale and every key, and then you wind up not really having anything that you've really nurtured to a larger level, please understand that jam tracks can be the same way. If all you ever do is just go out on YouTube and find a jam track and then just play over the top, but you find yourself playing the same way over every jam track, you're not really optimizing the ability that you might have if you found a track that suited your needs. If you said to yourself, look, I really need to find a track that is in E minor, or I really need to find a track that's in C sharp minor, or, you know, because for me, I'm always thinking relative major and minor. I'm always thinking my modes, right? So if I'm in E minor, I'm in G major. So I'm killing two birds with one stone. So I want to find or create a backing track that's in E minor, and I also want to create one in G major. And I want to work with both of those because I'm really getting, right, two birds with one stone. I can develop my entire fretboard in E minor and G major at the same time, and develop licks, look for licks from different artists that I like or different songs that I like, look for different ideas, and then try and develop those ideas. I shut the jam track off, I shut off my learning, and I just sit and I study my fretboard in E minor / G major, which is also A Dorian, which is also B Phrygian, right? So it's also D Mixolydian. There's a lot of benefits to that. So there's multiple things that I'm benefiting from, but I still need to jam over D Mixolydian to really get the full effect, or G major to get the full effect, or E minor, whatever, right? And then I do the same thing with C sharp minor and E major, right? And I do the same thing with A major and F sharp minor. Like, there's multiple but benefits to those. So instead of just grabbing blues track in E, blues track in A, blues track in G, and then all I'm doing is just moving the same thing around, and I'm doing the same things over and over with my backing tracks, I'd rather just choose one really great backing track that really represents what I'm trying to do or what I'd like to do in a key that I really want to explore on my fretboard, licks, positions, blah, 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 and spend some quality time with that, okay? So hopefully that's my opinion, because so often people are just, they're so fragmented. They know a little bit of this, and they know a little bit of this, and they know a little bit of this, and they know a little bit of this. And so when the time comes to actually play with a band or whatever, they don't really have a bigger picture of the whole thing. They just have a little, well, oh God, you know, every time I try and study this stuff, I just wind up playing pentatonic all the time. Well, that's why. Because you haven't really explored that door far enough. You haven't really opened that door enough. Okay? So hopefully that does make sense. And again, I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just saying that I think it's easy for us to just every day go on YouTube and just grab a track and then we just play over it. But we're not really immersing ourselves into the track. We didn't figure out what the chord progression was and really trying to make a connection to it, or the rhythm wasn't really very inspiring. It was just a track we found that was in the key we wanted, but the track itself kind of sucks. So we're not really putting ourselves there. That's why it's nice if you can find a track, whether it's one that you've gotten from me or one you get from YouTube or one you buy from a backing track place or whatever, that you really go, this is where I want to be. This is a good place for me. And every day you just spend time with the whole environment, that track, shutting it off, that fretboard, those licks, those patterns, whatever, right? Let's see here. Sometimes I want to jam. Can I get jam tracks for that stuff? Yeah, well, one place to try is, it's called guitar backing track. See if they have what you need for an actual track to a song. Guitar backing tracks or guitar backing track. I'm not sure if it's singular or not, but that's a good one to try. Okay? Let's see here. Okay, I think I got everything here. Okay, so it seems like you guys are trying to help him with what he's got in there. Yeah, so Dan, you're 100% right. Yeah, that's the thing is jam tracks, just be careful with that stuff, okay? Let's see here. So let me go back to this. We still got a few more minutes. Let me see what I got here. Bob says, can I get my speed and accuracy up when doing bends? Let's say I'm doing G and then releasing, I hit the B or the E string repeatedly. Well, the thing about bending is that when you do bends, again, it's like what I talked about before. You want to control everything. Whenever you're soloing, anytime you're soloing, you want to make sure that you're always deadening out everything. So nothing else rings out when you play. Okay? So as I'm playing, again, if there's anything above my fingers, it's being deadened with this hand. Anything below this hand is being deadened with this hand. Right? So when I bend, the first thing I do is I grab the string underneath with this finger. Just, it's what I do. Or I touch it with this hand. And then the strings above are being killed with this hand. Now, when I release, I gotta slowly move this hand in just a little bit to kill the string above me, so you don't hear the release that when I let go, because when I push, of course, I'm getting in the way of the G string. So when I come off that, I've got to touch it over here. So right now, I'm touching that G string. When I bring it down, I'm still touching that G string. You see? So that's how you control them. And that's the key with all of this kind of stuff. Is always touching everything at all times with the two hands, so you're never getting excess noise, right? So if I'm on the first string, this hand's touching everything. And as I move, this hand begins touching all those strings, and it keeps everything in check. Okay? Let's see. Ever see that Petrucci chromatic exercise? Yeah, there's a lot of different chromatic exercises, and I've probably watched a ton of them. But again, for me, the speed always still has to translate to something useful, right? Chromatics, I used to practice tons of chromatic stuff, and I still think they're very beneficial. But I found that it's always nice, too, to be able to find some sequences or some scalar patterns that I can actually use in my playing and practice those up to higher speeds as well, so I can use them in my playing. But no, there's a million different things. I can't even tell you how many thousands and thousands of hours I've spent practicing and studying things to kind of come out the other side now at 49, which is what I am now, and learning to combine elements of speed with finesse, with melody, and just kind of trying to make a home for all of these things. But again, different, depending on the style of music I'm playing over, different elements will shine through more because it makes more sense with the music I'm playing over. So, let's see here. Karaoke tracks is a huge one for backing tracks. Yeah. And that's the thing is just figuring out what one works best for you, one or two, and really spend some quality time. And then you can always go find something else too. But don't just treat every single jam track as just this mundane thing to solo over, and you find yourself just doing the same things over every single thing that you do. It's very uninspiring for you. It's very uninspiring for your listener, your potential listener. And it doesn't have any growth. I mean, it gets boring after a while. What I love to do is I love to build ideas on my fretboard and then look at it and go, okay, well, how can I implement this into my bigger picture, which I've got 20 of them, but which one is this going to fit into? Which bigger picture is this going to fit into that makes the most sense? Because I spent years practicing finger exercises and Yngwie Malmsteen stuff. I was a huge Yngwie Malmsteen fan when I was younger. I would learn all this stuff, and then I'd go to jam with a band and go, I can't use any of this. Like, my chromatic licks aren't going to help me jam with this band, and all my harmonic minor licks, there's not a single song that we play that I can use harmonic minor in. So somewhere along the line, I started going, that's okay. I can learn all that because I want to, but I need to start learning some things that I can convert into something practical that I can use in my playing. And that doesn't mean it's got to be safe. It doesn't mean it's got to be comfortable. I can get as crazy as I want, but I just got to figure out how to use it in a realistic sense in my playing. So when I jam, and that's what I do, that's what I've been doing for 10 years, is honing an element of the fretboard that makes sense to me. So when I jam with people, these things come out. It's not all this stuff I practice at home, and then when I jam, I do this because I can't use any of this. I want to be able to take everything I practice and utilize it on my fretboard when I play with people. So let's see here. What was the name of the chord demo program you've played along with? Chord Pulse was one of them, if that's what you're talking about. It's an app called Chord Pulse. I really like that one. It sounds kind of cheesy because they're all MIDI, but they're great for practicing with. It's very easy to just dial up a chord progression and just practice for an hour. Chord Pulse. Let me do this. And I think it's only for PC, though. I don't think Chord Pulse is for Mac. I think it's just for PC, but... okay, cool. Well, it looks like we're doing okay here. Let's see here. Bob says, I find I start practicing my major and minor scales, then work on speed and songs. Just feels like I'm spreading myself too thin. Should I focus on one or two? Well, this is the age-old question, buddy, is it's all relative to how much time you have. If you have 15 minutes a day to practice, there's no way you can get all, and I'm not saying you do, I'm just using this as an example. If you have 15 minutes a day to practice and then one day a week you get an hour in, or 2 hours or something like that, it's hard to develop a lot of things in 15 minutes. It's like going to the gym for 15 minutes. There's not a lot you can do in 15 minutes. If you've got an hour, then you can start trying to figure out what can be done in an hour that's a little more reasonable that I can achieve, right? This is where I went wrong when I was younger. And again, I'm not saying I'm not thankful for the things that I practiced. I am thankful for everything that I've done. But I was so obsessed with technique and speed at one point in my life that I never even thought about anything else. And then once I started getting out in the real world, I started realizing that, like, melody was something that I was really attracted to. Now, you might not be, and that's okay. But melody and phrasing and things like that, like Eric Johnson, Andy Timmons, like players like that were players that I really loved that could use elements of speed, but then they also had all of these other attributes that I didn't have because I never spent any time on those things. The time allotted for my practice was spent doing something in particular. Hey, Gary. So later I started realizing that I had to readjust the amount of time that I was spending on different things. So I'm going to be honest with you, Bob, when I'm performing with various bands, or I'm going to go out on tour with a band or something like that, and I have to learn a lot of material, that becomes my focal point, right? That's what I spend all my time doing because I've got a job to do. When I'm not, I tend to spend more of my time focusing on my own writing and creativity on my fretboard and things like that. And I don't play as many songs. But then all of a sudden, like the last couple of days, I've been jamming just all kinds of old stuff that I used to play with bands. And it's been really fun. It's been inspiring. I don't know that it's overly beneficial from this perspective or that perspective, but it's just been fun. It gets me excited to grab the guitar and play. So the hard part for you, Bob, is you got to figure out an hour or two a day. You got to figure out because I can't tell you 30 minutes a day technique, 30 minutes a day scales. It's what you're most interested in. Again, what I would say, Bob, is really everybody here, take a little time and really assess where you want to see yourself in 5 years, right? Really start thinking about the creature that you want to make, the monster that you want to build, and what elements that you need. And you just can't say everything. I want to do it all, because you can't. I love Tommy Emmanuel. I'll never fingerpick like Tommy Emmanuel. I just won't. I love his playing. It's not that I don't think I'm not good enough. It's that I'm not willing to sacrifice that kind of time to start something completely new and bypass what I'm already creating. I love what I'm creating, and I'm not willing to deviate what I've got going to try and be Tommy Emmanuel. I can just enjoy him. I can enjoy listening to him and see him live and all those things. And I'm okay with that. I'm not going to tear this down to create that. I'm going to keep building what I'm doing. And that, Bob, is kind of what you have to try and do is develop that, okay? I think I said, hey, Gary, nice to see you, buddy. Let's see here. Michael says, what are the best things to learn when you're new? The best thing, in my opinion, the best things to learn to do when you're new is develop your chords and your rhythm. Learn to feel a groove. You could be the fastest soloist on the planet, and if you can't groove on a guitar, groove doesn't necessarily mean ZZ Top. Groove can mean Tesseract, right? Groove can mean Dream Theater. Groove can mean a million things. Groove can mean Plini, depending on what you listen to, right? Groove can mean any number of different styles of music. So groove doesn't just mean Texas rock. Groove means listening to somebody and being able to lock in with what they're doing. So rhythm, learning chords, learning your bar chords, learning open chords, learning how to strum, right? And create rhythms. Whatever it is. Right? Whatever it might be, learning how to do those things in whatever style of music you like. But beginners should spend a lot of time developing. Most of the time, people try and move way too fast into scales and way too fast into theory, and they haven't really, like if you were trying out for one of my bands, if I was putting a band together and you came in, and I said to you, okay, we're going to do this jam and it's going to be in D, and you start watching me and you don't know any of your chords or something like that, there's no way we can play together. There's got to be a foundation, right? Because in music, the rhythm, and rhythm doesn't just mean chords, right? Rhythm can mean single notes. It can mean all kinds of different things. But that needs to be replicated. That needs to be created and replicated. And if I'm playing with somebody, they got to be able to play along with me. So I think those are really important, okay? Worry about scales and soloing and all that stuff once you've got a bunch of songs under your belt and you can just jam along with things. Here's something else I was going to say in the last session, but I'll say it real quick here. My wife and my daughter and I went to this sort of farmer's market thing, right? There was a bunch of different craft things and people were selling clothes and there was food and it was really cool. And they had bands. For 45 minutes, they'd have a band play. And then they'd take a 15-minute break and have another band. And most of the bands that evening were just one acoustic player or two friends that were playing acoustic and singing. And here's what I'm going to say, and I'm not being mean at all. Most of the bands that we watched were not overly skilled on the guitar and were not overly skilled on singing. They wouldn't be on The Voice anytime soon. But you know what they were? They were making music, they were playing on stage, they were playing music, people were loving it, and they were getting paid. We tend to set ourselves up for failure by always thinking that we have to do so much. And I'm not saying that you don't. I mean, that's the life that I've lived. But if you learned how to play chords and strum and things like that, you could get together with somebody and go out and play, right? They don't all care about how fast you can move your fingers. I learned that, you know. I mean, I don't get me wrong. It might sound like I'm making fun of those things, and I'm not. I play that way. That's what I love about, that's part of what I love about the way I play. But I sacrificed a lot of time and a lot of other things to develop those, where not everybody's looking for that. So that's why, again, you got to figure out what you want, right? Okay? Do I ever mix modes in my solos? Yeah, all the time. All the time. But again, it starts scary with making an assessment of what I'm trying to jam over, right? What is going on and what rules would apply to that, right? What is the chord progression and what options do I have? Because when I go to play, a lot of times I start with a general palette, right? If I was playing in, again, E major, I've got that E major sound, but I've got all my blues stuff that I can use in there as well at the same time. And then I've got chromatic stuff that I might add in. And I might do them slower or faster. Again, it depends on what I'm looking for. But it all depends on what I'm soloing over, okay? It all depends on what the progression is underneath me. If the progression is slower and more, you know, then it's requiring me to think about melody a little bit. Right? I got to think about melody a little bit and let that shine through as well. Okay? Let's see here. Got to run. Thanks, Steve. Okay, got to ask, what kind of picks are you using right now? Right now, I generally use Hawk picks from the UK, but right now I'm out of them. I gave them all away in Germany, and I gave them all away in Fort Wayne when I was at Sweetwater. So right now, as a backup until I get them, I'm using the new John Petrucci style picks, these Majesty picks, whatever they're called. They're the newer ones, and they're kind of this purplish color. That's what I'm using right now. So anyway, guys, I hate to run, but I got to run. Supper's upstairs as usual. So I hope everybody, you stay positive. I'm going to post these later so you can watch them again and maybe get some ideas. The big thing is you got to stay inspired, and you got to start developing a path for yourself. What things do you see that you really need to get to the next level? And don't just get overwhelmed by, well, my teacher said I got to do this. And, you know, I get all that. I've been a teacher my whole life. But what is best for you to reach your goals? That's what you really got to be thinking about, okay? So everybody, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with me. And I'll talk to y'all soon.